The War of 1812 began in June of 1812. Were the two sides prepared for a fight? Was it a popular war throughout the nation? As the United States became more outraged over the impressment of American sailors, it became clear that efforts to coerce Great Britain through economic sanctions had failed. Many politicians believed they were left with few alternatives. President James Madison issued a letter to Congress on June 1, 1812, which outlined the country's grievances against Great Britain. Congress debated for several days before reaching a decision. The House of Representatives voted 79 to 49 in favor of declaring war. The U.S. Senate agreed by a narrow 19 to 13 vote. President Madison signed the declaration of war on June 18, 1812, officially marking the beginning of the conflict. Meanwhile, in Great Britain, the new Prime Minister, Lord Liverpool, had determined to improve relations with the United States. On June 23, 1812, he repealed many of the trade restrictions which had resulted in American ships being stopped and searched. Unfortunately, at the time, it took 3 weeks for news to cross the Atlantic Ocean. Had the U.S. known of Britain's recent policy changes, the war might have been avoided. In June of 1812, neither side was prepared to fight the other. Great Britain's forces were already occupied, fighting the Napoleonic Wars. British troops were deployed throughout Europe, while the Royal Navy was busy blockading European ports. However, the British did have just over 6,000 regular troops stationed in Canada. These troops were also supported by the Canadian militia and Native American allies who sided with the British. In the United States, the American Army had less than 12,000 soldiers. Congress called for this number to be increased to 35,000, but there were few Americans who wanted to volunteer. State militias were unwilling to fight outside of their home state and were not well trained or disciplined enough to stand up to professional British soldiers. President Madison and others had assumed that the war would be over quickly. There was a belief that the United States could quickly seize Canada, which was still under British control. They believed Canadians would rally to the American side and jump at the chance to break away from Britain. At that point, Britain would no longer see the advantage in continuing the war and agreed to negotiate. When this scenario did not unfold, and Canada remained loyal to Britain, the war became a prolonged struggle. As a result, the war became unpopular, especially in the northeast section of the country. 2 Massachusetts congressmen were publicly insulted and harassed, while another was grabbed by an angry mob and kicked through town. Additionally, financing the war became a major concern because the United States had disbanded the National Bank. The National Bank's charter had expired in 1811 and was not renewed by Congress. Many private bankers opposed the war and therefore refused to help fund it. This opposition led to many people referring to the conflict as Mr. Madison's War. They blamed the president and his supporters for dragging the U.S. into a conflict which it did not need to be involved in. However, despite the lack of public support and the unprepared nature of both sides, a war had been declared. The declaration ignited a conflict which would last for over 2 years. It also marked the first time the United States of America officially declared war against another country.